hard for me to open up because I was talking a little bit earlier. Yes, I did lose my mom. Also lost my dad as well. So grief for me is something that I'm very passionate about, something that I love to talk about because of the personal things that I went through and the struggles that I went through. And as a therapist, we preach, like you talk to somebody, communicate with somebody, work through these things. And I, as a therapist, didn't do that.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to My Therapist Needs a Therapist podcast. I'm one of your co hosts, Alicia Freeman, or some people call me Allie. I don't think I've mentioned that to y'all, so y'all can call me Allie for short. And we have my partner in crime, but no crimes committed.
Yet. Hi, my name is Tamika Thompson. I'm the other co-host on My Therapist Needs a Therapist. Welcome back. We're super excited to see you guys, hear you guys, and see what the next discussion will be about.
Absolutely. So, if you all don't know, we are licensed professional counselors. Between the both of us, and somebody has more experience than the other, Tamika, she I would say
Well,
we have about what, 20 years plus
what?
of experience. Well, 20 by yourself almost. Is right?
It is, but don't be telling my age.
No, that's a good thing. What? No, you just started really young. That's how that happened. You
Mhm.
started when you were 18, okay? But and I started in the mental health field in 2016, and so we have a little bit of experience between the both of us, and so we have also experienced a lot of things. And part of the reason why I, in particular, kind of joined the counseling world is because of my own personal experiences with grief, with trauma, with relationship issues, with self esteem, anxiety, depression. I'm not going to say I experienced all of it, but quite a bit of things I've experienced that's gotten me to this place. And so, um, Tamika, tell a little bit more about what kind of got you into wanting to be a therapist.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, it was so many things. Family life, dealing with things in school. I was a big athlete in high school and in college, but I was extremely shy, had a lot of anxiety, dealt with just different turmoil and stuff in my life. So that really, for me, it got to me. I went to school and I was like, man, I just really want to graduate, get out of here. I'm done with this. I was not a student at all. So I just barely kind of crept by and stuff. When I got into college, I was like, I really want to understand more of the brain and more of the people, just, their emotions and stuff like that. So that kind of what led me into becoming a counselor. There is just an abundance of other things too that I just kind of thought about. And I was, I shared this in the last episode. I had lost my mom when I was younger. And I was like, I'm done with everything. I had a little baby and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I just don't really want to do anything. But I started like getting these signs like, you need to go back to school. You need to be doing this and stuff. So I think that was a little bit from my mom to say, like, hey, you have more to give than just, you know, graduating and just not doing anything for yourself. So those are the things that led me to being a counselor. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you mentioned all those things. And before we get a little bit deeper into this conversation, I want you all to stop,
Yeah.
take a moment, and subscribe to our channel. Like this video. Comment down below if you feel like this is a topic that relates to you, or if you have any challenges that you've experienced with what we'll be discussing today. If you haven't heard about us or don't know that much about us, if you go back to episode 1, which I might link it at the top of this video, you'll learn more about us, why we started this podcast, excuse me, and why we're here today. So, going back to you and what you said, Tamika, something that's very important, which is what we'll be going to be talking about today, is grief and
Mhm.
losing people in our lives, and how difficult that can be, and how people sometimes don't even know what to do when they're experiencing grief. So,
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about more about your story.
Well, there's a few people that, really know Tamika, the true Tamika. I'm very, it's hard for me to open up because I was talking a little bit earlier. Yes, I did lose my mom. I also lost my dad as well. So grief for me is something that I'm very passionate about, something that I love to talk about because of the personal things that I went through and the struggles that I went through. And as a therapist, we preach, like you talk to somebody, communicate with somebody, work through these things. And I, as a therapist, didn't do that. I was like, I was kept a lot of things to myself. I felt like when I did talk about it, I would just cry, or I would just get choked up, or I would start remembering like more negative things associated with the grief process than the positive, if that makes sense. So I did a lot of self-reflecting and wanted to really say, okay, I'm out here a therapist and I'm really trying to work with people on this grief process and I'm having a hard time going through it. So what is keeping me stuck? So that, just a little bit of that layer of why, grief is in working through that and working through the pain is so important, not only for myself, but for other people out there. And I think a lot of people get confused or, saying like grief is only about, someone dying. And grief is not only about someone dying, it's just about losing something or losing yourself within a process. Sometimes we grow out of friendships. Sometimes we grow out of family members and stuff. And I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. So that again, like I say, that's a little bit of why I wanted to go through that because I really wanted to be that person that someone can talk to if they're struggling with grief.
So how old were you when you lost your mom?
Ooh, I was 21.
21.
So 21. Yeah, I was 21. I lost her, yeah, at 21. So I was still honestly a baby myself. I was pretty mature for my age, but I was very socially awkward, at that stage. So you still need your mom at that age and trying to figure out, about life, trying to figure out about boys, trying to figure out about all kind of things and stuff. And with my mom, lost her very, very quickly. So she got sick and then she went into the hospital and she passed away. So it was really no time to think about it. And before I became a therapist, I was like, I'm gonna be a doctor and I'm gonna save her and stuff. But it was like within a week span of time that she passed away. So I was pretty young.
Yeah, I mean, wow. First off, I didn't know that it was that short of a time. You've always said like it was a short period, but in my mind, I'm like a month, a couple of months. I didn't realize it was a week. So that had
Mhm.
to be very difficult. You, like you said, you didn't even have time to process
Yeah.
what was happening. You got the news and then you got more news. And that's a lot to just even consume at any age, let alone 21. So
Mhm.
during that time, like, what was your understanding of grief overall?
Yeah, it was really no understanding of it at that time. It was mostly like this is not fair. And what a lot of people don't know, I was living in Kansas and so I happened to come back home and move in with my parents at that age too. We think we're going off to college and I ain't coming back and stuff like that. But I came back. For me, that was a sign that I got to spend some time with her before she passed because I could have been in Kansas, I could have been somewhere else, and not been able to spend some good quality time with her. And even when I came back home to Texas, I didn't know she was sick. So I got to spend probably about 8 months with her, and then she got sick after that. So yeah, it was just very quick turnaround when able to process it. So my understanding was very minimum. And for now, looking, from a different lens, I think I stayed probably in that anger stage for probably 5 years after she passed away. Like just very, very angry with the world and in her, and stuff like that. So, and a lot of people like, why do you be angry at the person that passed away? Because you have a lot of unanswered questions that you have.
Absolutely. And so where you are now, do you or would you say that you've healed in some ways from the loss of your mom, or do you feel like you still struggle with grief even now?
Still struggle, almost 20 years later, I still struggle with it. I am more in the acceptance, stage, but I still, like, go through these points of where I'm like, "Really? Like, this is fair or this real and stuff?" So I still kinda go back to the denial. So, yes, I'm in an acceptance, and what I want people to hear is, yeah, you get to the point where you're like, you kind of healed and stuff, but you're still going to have those moments where you go back, and you're just saying like, this is not right. This is doesn't feel good. And then especially when you're like have kids too, you don't have the grandmother figure and stuff, so you get angry with those things too. But I will say I'm probably like 85, 90% in the acceptance stage. I still can find myself tearing up. There are times too where I go to sleep at nighttime and I have some very, very vivid dreams. And that's part of my therapy too, is like analyzing like the dreams because I'm trying to work on self. And I think that's why a lot of us get into it because we're trying to figure out how can we be the best self for us and how can we be the best self for the person that's in front of us.
Absolutely. So, it's interesting that you're talking about this because part of that is recognizing that there is no way to fill the void of a parent, as
Hmm.
or even a child, right? And so, like, what have you done over these last 20 years to kind of like really move forward? Because 5 years of grieving, and then all of a sudden it's like, did you wake up and say, you know what? I have to accept that this is happening. What changed for you?
I don't know necessarily if I woke up and said like this has to be done. I think it was like you know that when you're in the quicksand or when you're in mud and you just kind of power through. I think I felt like that. I think I just felt like I just got to keep it moving. I got to do the best. I had a family. I have a family, so I had to be the best person for them. But there are, and what I want people to know, it's okay to just cry, or it's okay to sit and just think about that. So those are the things that I do is like sometimes I sit and like I think about all the memories and stuff. And I'm like, okay, and try to think about the happy stuff. But there are times when things are not as uplifting or happy that I go through and stuff. It's just trying to be the best person that you can be.
And so, what would you say to a person who might be experiencing a similar situation to where they feel like, oh, it's been 5 years, it's been 10 years, and I'm still dealing with this grief, even if it's not on a regular basis? How do you tell them, or what would you suggest ways in them working through that?
That's a great question. And I really think it's about how thinking about how you best heal, how you best work through painful situations. I would tell that person to look at maybe what's keeping you stuck. Is it keeping you stuck because you have unanswered questions? Are you stuck because you're feeling like your life has spiraled, maybe in a negative way or down? So look at the things that are keeping you stuck. I'm a big component of writing things down. So I'm always like writing things, like, okay, why am I so angry? And then writing the things down that make you angry. Why am I so sad right now? And writing the things down and see if you can break that down and work on those little areas. This is not a race. This is something that you're going to go through, but I will always tell you to try your best to find the little things in the day that make you happy. So those little things in a day are going to become big things. They're going to become more. Lean on the people that you have that are close to you, that you feel that you can trust, and talk through situations, what works for you, whether it's prayer, whether it's exercise, whether it's meditation, yoga. You find those things and do that because you can't just sit there. If you sit there, that's when you will get engulfed with sadness, pain, hurt, mourning. So you want to try to work on what makes you feel good.
Absolutely. So, to kind of segue to another part of your experience in your life is that in the last few years, you've also lost your father.
Mhm.
So what would you say would be kind of the difference between your grief and your experience with grief when it came to losing your mom as opposed to your dad?
Well, and I'll be a little bit transparent. You know, I was able to gain a better relationship with my dad towards the end, so it is a little bit different. That grief for him, he was able to live like many, many more years than my mom and stuff. So the difference in that was, me time, being able to being older. Being able to talk through things, being more prepared for him passing. I was able to kind of get myself prepared for it.
Mhm.
And that's probably the biggest difference. I think when you have time to process and get prepared for things, it helps out a little bit. When it just hits you, you're just spinning. And for me, I was like spinning out of control with that and stuff. So that what was different for me. My dad was a very like kind of tough love, no nonsense army black man that just was rough, I would say, and stuff,
Yeah,
but I would say that part of that, it made me strong. It made me the person that I am, so I love him for that, I respect him for that, and it was how he was raised. So some of the time, you just don't know any different. If you were raised tough, you raise your kids tough, so you don't know any different. So that was helpful for me, and as I get older now, I'm just like, I'm grateful, for the experiences that I had with him.
great. Do you feel like there's any like stone left unturned when it comes to dealing with the grief from losing him?
Heck yeah, because, for me, I'm like, why didn't you do these things? Why weren't, and they're my own stones, like I felt like could you have been a better dad? Yeah. For my mom, like could she be a better mom? No. She was amazing. I know she was like, I was like, no, yeah.
Perfect.
Perfect, perfect, that's why I was like, and anybody that experienced her loved her, and stuff, and so for my dad, he had his own struggles, so yeah, there's a lot of questions, we had things happen in our life um, that I would say kinda made me be the person that I am, I'm kind of a no nonsense type of person, I love people 110%, but I don't take crap, and I think that's where I get that from my dad. It's just like, if you're not meeting my expectations or I'm not helping you meet your expectations, then we need to move on. So that's the kind of the hard love that I have, so
The
and
thug
sometimes
in
I
you,
gotta
huh?
taper it down a little
You
bit.
you hear me? That's the thug in you, okay?
Oh,
We know
Lord, no,
those
so we told everybody that. That's how they look at me. I have the people like, "Oh my god, you're so nice, you're so sweet." Yes, I am, but
I felt that in myself. Yes, I am. But
that's why I became a therapist too. So
to help yourself. No, just kidding. But
right.
so my last question is, being that what you've had a few, like we said, stones left unturned in regards to the questions you had or the answers you were seeking, right? Do
Mhm.
you feel like you've also still been able to like move forward and recognize that, you know what, he's not perfect, he's a human at the end of the day. And there's things, of course, we always wish it to be better, but it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a big part of that is having the people in my life to talk it out. Because when we internalize a lot of things, we start to grab on things that might not be as positive or uplifting as we need to. So the people that are in my life, I was able to process those things with, and that helped me. Sometimes my husband laughs at me because after my dad passed away and I was like, "Oh my god, now I'm an orphan," and he just busted out laughing, but I laughed too, and he was just like, "Oh, my baby," and stuff, but it was, something that came out, but it lifted me a little bit,
Yeah.
I was just like
Dark humor is what they call that to me. It's dark humor. But in
exactly.
some ways, that's true, right? Even as an adult, you can still feel
Mhm.
alone, especially
Yep.
with losing both of your parents. So that's still a valid emotion, even though you laughed about it. So that's
Yeah,
my therapist coming out, but
yeah, it
it's
is.
true.
Very true, very, very true. Yeah, so and you too are a big inspiration, and stuff because I do have dark humor and not a lot of people get that. You get that and stuff, so
I do
you
too. So I
Exactly.
think that's why we get along because
Exactly.
not many people understand that.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, I mean that's it. It is, and it's an experience, and it's always going to be an experience. It's going to be a lifelong learning lesson for me, and that's why I want to help people process things because as a therapist, I still struggle. I'm still human, so I need them to know that too. And we're going to be a team and work through these stages together.
Absolutely.
So, Miss Alicia, can you talk about or what is your experience with grief in life? You laughing.
Well, first off, I come from a really big family. So my mom is the oldest of 14 kids. So I definitely, just on my mom's side alone, it comes having such a large family means that there's a more likely or a higher likelihood of experiencing losses, especially at a younger age. But coming on my dad's side of the family, he's the oldest of three and he lost his brother. I'm not sure exactly how old he was, maybe 20 when he
Mhm.
lost his brother. And that's just an estimation. I want to say he might have been a little bit younger, but that was actually the first experience that I can recall with grief. Um, and I remember it so vividly because I was on either my uncle's or my dad's shoulder, and it was so many people in that church. And I just remember looking over into the casket and just remember it wasn't like traumatizing in that way. It's just such a very like vivid memory that I have of
Yeah.
that loss. And like, this is so illegal to say, but I have like, mem funny memories. It's funny, but a lot of people like, oh my God, that is so wrong. So I have memories of my uncle as far as like giving me a sip of beer and like I know don't do that. Don't give kids those things. But and I laugh because, it's like, you're not supposed to be doing that. It's just people don't think about things at that age. It was the early 90s, okay? So um, but just like I just remember my experiences with him and then seeing that he wasn't there, even though I didn't truly understand the concept of death, I knew I wouldn't see him again, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I come from a household to where we don't talk about death. We don't talk about losses. You see, you pay attention to how your parents respond to it, right? Like when my dad lost his brother, he didn't really talk about his brother after that. Lost him on Christmas Eve. And
Wow.
so, growing up, my dad was never excited about the holidays, but for a long time, I never tied the two together because my mom was extremely excited about the holidays. And so there was always arguments around the holidays, and my mama wanted to do all these things, and my
Mhm.
dad didn't, right? But not only that, his that wasn't his first major loss. His first major loss was his father when he was a younger teenager, I think like 15, 16, when he lost his dad, right? And so he never talked about his dad. I might have saw like a picture or two of him at my grandma's house, but that's just something, that's how he handled his grief, is just not talking about it.
Mhm.
And it took, I don't know, 20 years for him to even say, like, yeah, I think about it, or I'll go visit the grave. I'm like, well, why don't you ever talk, like, say these things? In my mind, I'm like, what? We have questions. I don't know
Mhm.
anything about your dad. I remember my uncle as a kid, but I don't remember like who he was as a person, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then my mom, on the other hand, like my mom has a very interesting perspective when it comes to grief because she grieves people who she's never met in real life as well as people she has met in real life. And I know that sounds a little bit like strange to some people, but like my mom came from a very traumatizing household, for instance. And so being the oldest of 14, there's a lot of different experiences she had with trauma, abuse, all of those things. And so as a child, when you see like these family oriented shows, you want to
Yeah.
be a part of that family, right? So a show
Mhm.
that she was really big on was Little House on the Prairie, and they called him Paul. And so
Mhm.
that was her Paul. And so when he passed away, like she grieved him like, a real person. She'll even talk about him to this day because that's a character that she truly related to. And in real life, he was a good person. But she also lost her dad when she was 3, 4, right?
Mhm.
So her mom didn't talk about it, right?
So that
She never really know she's heard stories about how he passed, but she doesn't really know the true story. She doesn't know who he really was. She
mhm,
doesn't really have many memories of him. There's so many things that have been left untold to where now you're taking it on throughout the rest of your life. And even as an adult, even in her 50s, she still doesn't have a lot of answers about those things.
mhm,
And so when you have two parents who these are their experiences with grief. And so when we experience grief, it's the same thing. It's like, well, we don't talk about it. Like I
mhm,
feel sad, I feel upset, but how do I deal with that? And so actually, since I've been in Texas, which is almost 7 years, I believe, I've had quite a few losses back to back. I've lost a younger cousin just last year. Well, one the beginning of this year, but a couple years ago, I lost a cousin and a great aunt a month apart. In that same year, about a month late, not even a month later, it's like 2 weeks later, I lost an uncle who I was extremely close with as a child, even into my teenagehood. And, I knew he had issues with substances, right? But as a child, you're like, oh, he's the funny uncle.
yeah.
But he's also a person for me who I looked up to because he will always like take me under his wing. We'll be under the car, like trying to fix the car. We'll be building stuff together. That's something I did with my dad. But when my dad was on the road, I'll be at my uncle Antonio's house. Like we'll be
Mhm,
hanging out over there. And so it's the craziest thing because I was headed to Mississippi for my great aunt's funeral. And I'm on the phone with my dad. And I'm like, Dad, when the last time you talked to Uncle Antonio? Right.
mhm,
And he was like, well, I've been trying to call him the last couple of weeks, but he hasn't answered. So we, have the funeral for my aunt and all of that. And on the way back to Texas, it's when I got a call saying that they found him dead. He had a seizure and he had already been struggling with alcohol for years. And so it had gotten to the point where he had a lot of health issues.
mhm,
And so that was very difficult for me because I couldn't go back at the time and attend his funeral. And so I really struggled with that loss for about a year. Like anytime I would talk about him, I would cry. And it still like hurts me or affects me even to this day. But now I can talk about it and be like, I'm okay. I've made peace with it. I've accepted for what it is, but it's still difficult knowing how he passed away and knowing he was by himself. So it's like I've had those experiences, but now like dealing with the grief like that, like it's still hard, like you said, but I'm an adult now. And so I recognize that it's hard and I recognize that I have emotions that need to be addressed.
mhm.
So
Wow.
that's like a grief history
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
my experience
So
with grief.
I have a question. What do you feel like you would handle things differently now that you're an adult and you're a mom and you're a wife? Do you feel like you want to teach that to your children to
Absolutely.
speak about death or to speak about death or grief?
Absolutely. And it's funny because I think I mentioned this in the last episode when we talked about grief and how one of my nieces like is very aware of death and the
Mhm,
other one's like, I know what it is, but it's not a big thing to her. And I think for me, it's like addressing it as it comes, like checking in and just saying like, how are you feeling? Do you understand like what's happening? And like explaining that part of it. Explaining like death means that you're not going to see this person anymore. This person is no longer here. Now,
mhm,
we, of course, add in the spiritual aspect. They're still with us spiritually, right? Because even when my kids get older, they're going to be asking about my husband's parents.
mhm,
Just lost his mom in October. He lost his dad 2 years before that. Also lost his grandfather the year before that, lost his grandmother a couple of years. So all of his parents are no
mhm,
longer with us, right? So she's gonna have questions like, I'm with mama's mama and daddy all the time. Even my grandmother is still here. My grandfather is still here, right? My mom's stepdad. Um, and so I'm sure she's going to have that question, and that's when we'll have to have that conversation with her.
Wow. Yeah. Do you feel like that's something that you're able to really process and talk to her about, or do you feel like you still have your own struggles that might mirror some of the things that happened when you were younger?
No, I think who I am now, I don't find that I would have any difficulty in that. Not in that particular topic, just because I've experienced it so much and I recognize that my experience with grief or grieving someone is going to look different based off of that person, right? So
Mm,
like my younger cousins, for instance, like we grew up with each other when we were younger, but as we got older, we lost contact. So although it was like a sad experience and it was hard to know like because of the way that she lost, which is also through substances,
mm,
um, you know, it's hard to see that, but my connection with that grief is different than the connection I had with my uncle per se. Does that
yeah,
make sense?
makes sense. Do you think there is a difference between losing someone naturally versus losing someone due to substance or due to maybe a murder or due to some type of violence? Do you feel like there's a difference in being able to grieve that?
You know, that's an interesting question. And I feel like it's twofold because I do feel like murder, yes, I think there's a clear, distinct difference between it. But substances, and I would even say health related and natural, I think it really depends on the age, in my opinion.
Okay.
Um, because my cousin, for instance, who just passed, like she was in her early 20s. And from what we know, like it's really no true answer on did she consume those drugs on her own because she wasn't known to do drugs. She was known to drink, right?
Mhm.
Or was there foul play involved? So having a lot of unknowns like makes it more difficult to fully accept it because there's more questions out there, right? But then you have a person who maybe struggled with substance for a very long time and it's just been a lifelong battle and you know that they try hard to get sober and they end up taking their life, like it's still hard, but then the accepting piece is a little bit different. But I feel like when it comes to like health related stuff, like cancer or, you know, even AIDS, like I had an uncle that passed from AIDS, my mom's full brother. It was only three of them that were born with my mom's dad, right? And so she lost one of her full, I say full, but you know what I mean, sibling.
Yeah, yeah.
And he battled with HIV AIDS for years. And seeing that is difficult. It doesn't matter how long it is, seeing it is the difficult part. And so you're always in grief because you don't know like where his health is going to be.
Mhm.
With Dex's mom, it's like I feel like that was more difficult because she was diagnosed in December of 2022, right before Thanksgiving, with stage 3 cancer. And then she was going through her radiation, right? Oh, we've cleared up this cancer, but we found this cancer in another part. So it was like an ongoing thing. And it's like, but we keep getting it, but it keeps growing. And
Mhm.
then toward like a couple of weeks before she passed, like we're all on the phone. She sounded great. And then she's in hospice.
Yeah.
And then a week later, she passes. So it's like, I don't know, it's difficult. I feel like no matter who it is and what is the cause, because I think the relationship with the person makes it way more difficult than the law, like how they lost their lives in the first place
Yeah.
for
That
me.
makes, yeah, that makes sense. Earlier, you had asked a great question about how would you talk or work or process this grief with a client that you're working with, or how do you tell somebody in your family possibly that's maybe dealing with grief? How do you work with them or talk to them through that?
Mm. You know, I always have a difficult time answering questions because I'm always seeing it from different perspectives.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, but what if this client is like blaming themselves for that loss, like blaming themselves, saying, I should have did this, I should have been there, right? But if I could think of like a general response to that, um, I would say like, let me think on that for a second.
I know it's a
I would say it's never easy.
mhm,
I would say that I love to give people perspective in the sense of recognizing like where they come from and how family plays a huge role in how we grieve, right? And so by them gaining that perspective, they can recognize like, oh, that's why I'm struggling with this, right? Because sometimes you can't get to that answer on your own. So, like for instance, like I said, with my parents, they didn't talk about it. And so I'm
mhm,
like, why don't we talk about it? Like sometimes you have to question, like, why is it that this is the way we deal with it? And even questioning it makes you want to do something different. So recognizing like how you're dealing with that grief. Am I talking about it? Am I shutting down? Am I angry? Why is it that? And I think I'm kind of mirroring what you said earlier. It's like questioning the why, figuring out, okay, what can I do next? And
mhm.
what are some ways that I know will make me feel better? I think it's some of the more valuable things that you can do. I'll
Yeah.
still say like find a way to celebrate that person or at least like acknowledge the presence that they had in your life, right? Might not feel like a celebration, but just even saying, you know what, this is her birthday or this is his birthday and I
Mhm.
miss them. I love them. And I do wish that things could have been different. But I come from a place of prayer and I come from a place of spirituality. And so I'm going to say, but I know that God has a plan. I may not always see the plan. I may not always agree with the plan, right? That's not my job to
Yeah.
agree with it.
Mhm,
But accepting it, accepting that that plan was not meant for me,
mhm.
but also acknowledging like Dex's mom, for instance, was a very powerful person and she put in a lot of work on this earth to save a lot of people. She was truly a beacon of God. And so knowing that brings us peace within itself.
Mhm.
So like pulling from that person and pulling away like what was that powerful thing that their time here, even if it was short, played a role in who you are today.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful and that's amazing. And this conversation, this topic is so important, and I would love to hear some questions that some people have, or just like things that they find that might be they think is weird, unquote, or different. What questions do you have? Because there's so much more to your story than just going through the stages. It's so much more than that. And I think people don't understand what that means. There is something there and out there. I'm so in tune with like just nature, just whatever is out there and stuff. And I feel like you have to find that to be able to find your peace. So I would love to hear some of the questions that people have about grief, or just talk to us about what they went through, and what their struggles are.
And what has helped, right?
Yes.
What
Yeah.
has helped? Or maybe something isn't helping,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe asking the question like, well, what can I do about this situation? And we'll be happy to provide some insight. Or
Yeah.
if y'all see a question in the comments that you want to add reply to, feel free. We love to have that commentary. Um, I also want to note really quickly, like as a mental health professional, but not even just a mental health professional, professionals in general, attorneys, doctors, nurses, therapists, psychiatrists, we're all dealing with people who might have experienced grief.
Mhm.
And so I think it's so important right now to even note like if you are experiencing grief and you haven't worked through that grief, trying to take on a client that's dealing with grief probably is not. I'm just gonna say probably is
Yeah.
not the best thing to
Yeah. Yeah.
And we
Right.
all know, right? Our number one goal is to do no harm. And so you have to check in with yourself and you have to be aware of what you're experiencing. And that applies to so many other things, not just grief, but substance use, trauma, abuse, any of those things. Trying to take on clients and help them through those things when you haven't helped yourself through them You have to really like what were you gonna say?
No, I was like, that's wonderful. We call that in our world like counter transference. If you have not worked through your own issues or concerns or struggles, it might be best to say, I need someone else to help you. But also, too, if you're a friend talking to another friend and you feel like you're working through your own problems through that friend, it's time to take a step back
Yes.
with that and figure out like, am I seeing this person in front of me? Am I hearing this person in front of me? Am I working with this person in front of me? Not am I working with myself through that person?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just really important. It's something that you got to think about. And I love this episode because I felt like we were open, we were transparent. Alicia, I thank you so much for talking about the things that you've been through, the struggles that you've been through. And I think this just opens up our audience more to say, man, those two therapists right there are always helping people and always you like maybe not always, but on point,
Always. Oh, no, just kidding.
that right
Listen,
there.
even if it's one person, even if it's one person,
Mhm.
what's really going to be helpful for us is really getting our voices out there. We
Yeah.
want to get out there. We want to connect with people, all people, right? All types of groups of people. And so we really need you all's help with sharing our videos and really like spreading the message of awareness. There's not enough of women of color, people of color who are out there actually talking about the stories of people of color. And
Yeah.
so we want to get that message out there and we want to connect with you all. We want to really show that it's okay to experience the things that you are experiencing, but it's also important to know that you can get through it and you can work through it and we gonna be all right. Okay.
All
We
right.
gonna be all
I was just ready to say that. I was like, we need a song at the end of this because happy Black History
right.
Month, Black every day of the year, month, everything, but happy Black History Month.
Yes.
And we just, yeah, we need to end this with like a song or something. That's going to be our
Well,
next.
copyright. So we can
Yes, yes. Or maybe, well, I was
maybe
going
I
to say,
can find something to put in there, but yes, happy Black History Month. It is Valentine's Day. I don't know if y'all celebrate it or not. Me and my husband kind of go back and forth every year, child. Like we doing so we're not. It
we're
is
going to
what
celebrate this.
this is Valentine's Day. And I'm gonna pick up my little Valentine later on too. So but no, in all seriousness, I think this is a great episode. I always enjoy like doing these with you, Tamika. Hopefully in the next episode we will have a special guest.
Hmm.
We're gonna make sure we pin him in the video so so
Yes.
he'll
And
know he's up
a
next.
lot of other things too, but super excited about our next guest. Super excited. And I think you guys are going to be excited. We always bring us three together, bring so much like energy that it is. I don't know. I don't know what the word
We
to
get
call
a little wild, like let's be honest, it gets a little
it.
crazy when it's you and I, like we can balance each other out, but when he enters the picture, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, we need to reel it back because
All I have to do is like that's what I do sometimes, like slow it down. But yeah, he's amazing, so I cannot wait.
I just want to note, if you all made it to the end of this video, I just want to note that I'm gonna have to be the moderator in the next video, and y'all will see why. So, on that note, thank you all for watching to the very end. Stay tuned for the next episode. We appreciate you all. Subscribe, like the video, comment below, and stay tuned to the next episode. I'm looking forward to.
Yes, yes. Thank y'all so
All
much.
right. Bye.